Late in starting, call the meeting to order, and we do have a quorum of 16 tonight. We did not have a quorum for the executive committee meeting earlier this evening, so we won't be bringing forward any seconded motions, and any motions that are made are going to have to originate here. Everyone should have received a copy of the minutes of the prior meeting, so could a motion to approve the minutes? Motion made. Seconded? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The minutes have been approved. Okay, on correspondence, we have a lot of folks excused tonight. Michael Potter, John McMillan, Jim Vina, Lynn Kane, Steve Rinaldi, Phil Myers, Dave Bettini, and Steve Retzeloff have all submitted requests to be excused for tonight. We have in disciplinary action 5 pieces of disciplinary action that have been noted on the EMS Council agenda from Department of Health, none of them being local to here that you can review. And then on correspondence, we have a letter from the Hoosick Valley Rescue Squad regarding the agency's failure to comply with the DOH inspection. I've been told by the executive director that that's being taken care of, right, Tim, and no action is...
Yeah, that was an older letter.
There's no action necessary?
No.
Okay. We've been notified that the Cambridge Valley Rescue Squad has received their new operating certificate to reflect the expansion into the town of Hoosick and the village of Hoosick Falls. We do have a letter from Scott Skinner requesting that his alternate Tom Corcoran replace him due to increased workload. I think Phyllis is here tonight, who's the chair of the membership committee, and we should refer that letter to Phyllis to figure out what type of seat that Scott held and how we can best accommodate his request. So, and Tom is here tonight, so hi, Tom. Tom is currently the designated alternate in that seat. Tim will talk about, in his executive director's report, the resignation of Jay Tyler, our training coordinator, who has left recently, even though I think he's been helping Tim through a transition period, and Tim can talk about plans going forward. And last, sadly, we have a letter of resignation from one of our members tonight, and that's Judith Shub. This, I guess, will be your last meeting.
I asked if I could extend that to the end of September to give Columbia County adequate time to find a replacement and to ensure that you have a full roster throughout the summer.
Oh, awesome. Well, in that case, I stand corrected. Okay.
My mistake, I'm sorry.
All right. So effective the end of September? We'll change that. Okay. All right. So I think that, Tim, we wanted to go into Terry first, right? Go out of order. Is that correct? Is that what the plan was?
That's what I had thought. Terry could say his piece and be done.
Want to do that, or?
I'm all done, thanks.
Okay.
Sure.
So we're gonna deviate from the printed agenda tonight and move into a presentation by Terry Hannigan, who's our counsel. Terry's here tonight to do the first part of a 2-part series on education about the CON process, and we've talked about this at the last couple of meetings, that we have a lot of responsibility that's given to us as members of the regional council, given to Jim and the members of the CON committee about making evaluations with regard to certificate need applications, and take the opportunity now to review that responsibility for us. That will make us all more informed. I know when I first joined the council, no one sat down and taught me what we were doing, but things came down and we're all expected to simply vote. And pretty much most people will vote with the group. I think it's important that we have some basic education on what the responsibilities we have are to help inform our votes. And so Terry's going to do the first part of this tonight, and then be back in a meeting in the fall for the second part. And I think we're talking about 25 or 30 minutes of time, including giving everyone the opportunity to ask some questions. So let me turn the floor over to you.
And there won't be homework. I will not be taking questions. I'll be reading from a prepared statement. So, no, just kidding. Those of you that know me, I do that a lot. Those of you that don't, just half the lies you've heard about me aren't true. I'm going to do this presentation. What's it? Which? That's for you to figure out. we've done a number of CONs, public hearings, that I've actually been a party to, acted as hearing officer in a few. It's was brought to my attention that maybe we aren't as refined as we need to be in this area in terms of what criteria the con committee has to consider, and when the matters come to the floor. Procedurally, it's always kind of awkward. Fortunately, Rich Branch usually there to abstain, but to tell us how to do the things right. So we've been fortunate. There has been a landmark change in the CO1 process with a decision that came down from the appellate division last month in the Utica Fire Department case. That's still it's still evolving. It's big news for Utica because now they get to, they get to have their ambulance service. The most remarkable thing, and I'm not going to talk about the substance of the case tonight, except to tell you it is significant, and what they've done is it's fostered, that case also fostered some legislation that just got passed. I think it is yet to be signed, but that essentially removes the Remsco from any part of the determination of a municipal CON. Okay, there's legislation that was passed earlier this month, June 20th, earlier this month, last week, that affects Glens Falls and Utica, and basically it bypasses the Remsco, that if you're a municipality, you've got your 2-year CO1, you just go right to the state, and not even the SEMSCO, you're right to the DOH to get your authority. So it's kind of a curious development. I don't know what it portends for everything else, but just know that that's out there. If anybody wants a copy of that decision, I can send it to you. It's called Utica versus Danes, but I can email you a copy of it. It's got some interesting stuff in it, and it gives a little bit of a procedural history of muni CONs. What I'm going to talk about tonight is not the muni CON process, but the garden variety CON process that Tim loves when he gets applications in, and that we all kind of deal with, or we have been dealing with. And best place to start is with the computer. How about this?
Left one.
Left one? Left one's full?
Lower left.
Lower left. We have it. Okay. A lot of the authority, what we have to do is the Remsco comes from 3003, the public health law, and specifically this section, 3003-5, Remsco shall have the responsibility to make determinations of public need. Couldn't be clearer than that. That puts it right in our laps in the first instance. 3005, again, moving through Article 30. No ambulance or advanced life support first responder service shall begin operation without the prior approval of the Remsco. Okay, those two seem to go together. 3008 is where it really comes back upon us to make the determination of public need within 60 days of when the application's final. And we'll get to the application process. Again, this is the area that's been challenged by that new legislation, not by the Utica case, but by the new legislation that was passed but yet to be signed. The process, application comes in, and part of that application process is a requirement that they address and identify public need. Now, public need is like pornography. You don't know it till you see it. It's hard to describe, but and it's even harder, I think, for these applicants to articulate it, particularly unless you have an area where there absolutely is no service, and we haven't seen that, not in a long time. Determination that the application is complete. That is, as easy as that sounds, that's probably one of Tim's toughest jobs, because we get the application in, we got to check it against policy statement 0606, got to check it against our local procedures. We got to make sure that all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and a lot of times they're not. A lot of these things are done on the fly. Sometimes they're done, to get them in time for our meetings. So once the application is deemed complete, though, that starts the clock running for that 60 days I referenced in the last slide. F&C, fitness and competency review. That's the statutes leave it for us to do, but it also allows us to boot it to DOH, and that's what we do, okay? Because we don't have the assets or the resources to do this, to do it, a fitness and competency review. Takes us off the hook for it. We're in a situation now where we got pretty good response. We had a couple of glitches, but now I think we got a process down with the state where they can do these. And basically, it's a background check. I don't think there's ever been an issue with the muni. They're deemed to be fit and competent by the fact that they're the government, which in my mind should be just the opposite, the fact that they're government, they probably, never mind. And this augmented, we can't augment the process, but I don't know what we're gonna do, but if we wanted to have our own documented process to determine fitness and competency, we could do that. The public notice, Tim has to jump through some hoops, make sure everything's published in a timely fashion, and then we have the public hearing. Sometimes we have 2 or 3 public hearings, depending upon how well we did the first one. But the standard is, and I put this in here because it really is the crux of what you're going to get criticized about on if you deny or if you uphold one that gets challenged in court. It's the stated purpose of the public hearing is for technical review and objective evaluation of the applicant's statement of need. Now, it should really be just a reiteration of what's in that application, okay? But the public hearing aspect of it is for everybody else to come forward and state their piece. The applicant should have already done that succinctly and sufficiently in their application. Okay, this is the $64,000 question. What is public need? They put a different definition in the policy statement, and this has been the Department of Health's definition for a long time. I broke it down because I'm a pretty simple kind of guy. I'm the first of my generation without a tail, so I have to break things down and make it real easy. And this is worth reiterating. When we go through with the con committee, this is what we've recited, we've gone over it. And even when you look at it, even when you read it, even when you think you understand it, it still takes a little bit of doing. But if you're on the con committee or if you're dealing with one of these applications as part of the Remsco, this is the standard for need. A demonstrated absence, reduced availability, or an adequate level of care. One of those 3 things. An ambulance and emergency medical service, that should be services, available in a geographical area which is not readily correctable through a reallocation or an improvement of existing resources. It doesn't sound that complicated, but it really is when you try and scratch the surface on these things. I'm not going to try and go through each of these elements with you because without an application sitting in front of you and some familiarity with it, it's just academic gymnastics or intellectual gymnastics. But we're using this outline as opposed to the definition, which is just words together. I think makes it a little bit easier to follow because you can actually check off what of those 6 elements, there's actually 7 elements, 2 under 6 apply. Local factors in determining public need. This is something that the state has come up with in Policy Statement 0606. To tell you the truth, I don't know really how it fits in our arena. I know that every time we get a CON, there are some local issues, but they're not that detailed laundry list. Typically, geography isn't one of them, but it can be. So we have in the Remsco a certificate of need application process, which is being revised and which we will put on the agenda for annual meetings and update. The state wants you to update it annually. There's really not a whole lot to update annually, but you're supposed to, I guess, re-adopt it. That if there are peculiar things, if we had a lake in the middle of, or if you were Herkimer County, which is this wide and yay long, it might make for different or additional criteria you want to put on. Another thing is, like everything, they want it stated. They want it stated ahead of time. They want it in writing. And they want you to be able to, they want an applicant to be able to articulate or to be able to have it to respond to it. Again, this is our current, the 7-page certificate of need application process. This works in conjunction with 0606, which is the policy statement that kind of set the standard or sets the criteria for applications. And again, this comes under other local factors, this bottom point, this having our own.
Terry?
Yep.
Does the applicant get to specify that they have local factors, or does the region get to specify and say, we want you to satisfy the local factors, or is it both?
I'm going to answer both because that's a great question, Steve. I have no idea, but I got to tell you this: if they bring up something and you don't address it, it could go back to bite you. The intent behind this is that the Remsco is supposed to decide, in addition to all of the constellation of things that are subsumed within public need and all of the criteria in 0606, that there's some weird little wrinkle. If we can't get over the mountain, maybe it warrants, or the agency can't get down the mountain or up the mountain. Maybe that's a geographical or a peculiar local issue that we want. And it may have some relevance when we're talking about state borders and things too, in terms of CONs. But it's designed to be our issues, the Remsco's issues, that we let the applicants know about. But I think it's clear that if there are peculiarities with, in a given area, that if the applicant brings it up, under this catch-all, we probably have to consider it.
Is it fair to say that if there were anything that either party put on the table in this area and were not handled seriously, that basically is just that will end up as part of litigation?
In litigation, I mean, yes. Okay, I'm going to cop out and say yes. In litigation involving these types of things, the CONs, and a lot of it is emanated from here. We've got, there's some Troy cases, some Parkland, the Parkland CON case from years ago, the Utica case, which is a big deal now. The big things that the courts look to are procedural errors. So if you didn't have local criteria, or if you had it and they didn't address it, then the absence of us to address it would probably deem to be somewhat of a procedural error as opposed to substantive, and will get thrown back.
Do the local factors have to be? Could the council set a factor that's not reasonable?
You could, and it could get kicked back. It could get on substantive grounds, but there is great leeway. The reason there are Remscos is because it was contemplated that there would be variances within the geography of the state. That if you have something that's completely off the wall and wacky, bring us the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West, okay, as part of your application, yeah. But if you've got something that's reasonable, or I want to say rationally related to the application, it will probably be validated by the court. I mean, it doesn't have to be, it's not like every other Remsco has to have it or use it, but if it's somehow, if you can cogently make an argument, yeah, this is a factor we consider, we're the only ones in the state to consider it, but this is important to us, and you can justify that, then yeah, your chances are probably 80-20 it'll be upheld.
Thank you.
Okay. Making the determination of public need. Okay, if you haven't sat through public hearings, they're fascinating things. We really enjoy them. Committee reviews the hearing officer's report. This is, I don't want to bore you with the hearing officer reports. We used to do it differently under the old policy statement. Now the hearing officer is supposed to write a report. The DOH wasn't really clear on what they wanted in the report. So I've been writing them like I was the hearing officer under the old 9310 standard. I'm not certain that's what they want, but that's what they're getting. And the hearing officer's report is basically a compilation of the testimony, and in the non-controversial ones, they're pretty much adopted as the way they're drafted. And the controversial ones, they go back to the con committee and they make a recommendation. It's the con committee's recommendation, not the hearing officer's report or recommendation. They can actually make findings of facts that are contrary to what the hearing officer makes. Fortunately, that's why we have Terry, because she gets it down right. So in case I don't or the hearing officer doesn't. But in any event, it comes back after the hearing to the con committee, and one thing, and we're not, they discourage us from doing this in the half hour before the Remsco meeting, but very often that's when the con committee meets, and to make a recommendation. And then, and I threw this in there, and I probably shouldn't have, but again, it's a preface to the Utica discussion about the Utica case. There's no inertia to these applications. They either rise or fall on their own merit, with the exception of muni CONs. Muni CONs, there's a presumption. And now, when they come back, there's even a strong presumption. I could bore you with the discussion about that, but I'm going to bore you with that in the fall instead. When we talk about muni CONs and we get a little more clarity out of where this Utica case is going to take us. But, okay. this is, what do we do in front of the Remsco? This is always kind of awkward, because what the state wants you to do is to put the recommendation of the committee out there and either vote in favor or against it. But that's the procedure that's supposed to be followed. There's a opinion of the DOH council that says that. So the con committee chair presents the application, the con committee recommendation comes to the floor. Remsco members may inquire of the con committee, and the vote at the Remsco, or the hearing, the discussion of the Remsco, is not a reiteration or rehashing the public hearing. It's not a time for any additional information. It's not time for the applicant to come in and say, I want to change I want to do this or do something differently. The time to do that is before the public hearing. We have had some of these where we've probably gotten out of, for the sake of erring on the side of safety, we've probably let them go a little far afield. How about that? That's a fair characterization?
Is liability of the organization in the state an issue? If, for example, you have a situation where there's a mountain and the con committee or the Remsco failed to address concerns about access to that area, and then there's an incident and the parties sue, would they look to the CON process to see if there was an omission that would have seriously affected the decision?
Probably not. Okay, probably not. You're pretty far removed from any liability. Personally, you have no exposure, but even as the Remsco, you're pretty far removed. As long as you go through the right process. And again, when these applications get challenged, it's typically not because somebody died somewhere else. It's typically because somebody's not happy. And the best way to attack any governmental proceeding, any agency determination, is not on they made the wrong decision. It's they did the wrong things to get to that decision. It's very difficult, and that's why the Utica decision is so, kind of earth-shattering, because typically the judges will go along with an agency decision. I mean, 95% of the time, if there's a rational basis for it, where they throw these things back and send them back for further consideration or reverse them, is when they say the procedure's flawed, or in Utica was an interesting situation because they actually said they made the wrong decision. They didn't consider all the right stuff because and again, it's remarkable. But I'll talk about that either after the show or in the fall. But the Utica case is really something to behold. Okay, so basically the discussion when the motion's on the floor is not the Phil Donahue show. Okay, that's really, for those of you that are old enough to remember Phil Donahue. Okay. Action before the full Remsco. Okay, all discussion on the motion is on the record, and that's again, I keep going back to Utica. That became very important. We have Terry here to do that. And fortunately, and if Rich was here, I'd credit him. Rich is always the detail guy to make sure that the right words get said in the right order, and it's very important. That was one of the knocks in the Utica case, that they didn't articulate in the record all the criteria that they used. And I think we're going to have to be a little more mindful of that now, not just at the con, but at the full Remsco, in the discussion that we have made a determination that public need, recite the definition, and go through that. And actually make affirmative findings of this was demonstrated, that was not demonstrated. Discuss and specifically identify the reasons and rationale, which is what I just said. You're going to have to give better reasons than just the con committee thinks it should go, aye, nay, and then specifically refer to evidence and testimony presented at the public hearing. These are I can't remember whether I lifted these out of 06 or whether I lifted them out of the Utica case, but it's the words that come up twice are specifically. You're going to have to use more specificity in having the discussion about why someone's application is getting voted up or voted down. And then determination of the Remsco. Again, this is the awkward part. What was that motion for? Was it for or against the application? Well, the motion is either to approve the application by accepting or rejecting the con committee's recommendation. Quorums and abstentions, again, 16 is a quorum. We always get into the issue of who's conflicted out, but it still has to pass by 16 votes. Abstentions, I think probably this organization does a better job than most any organization I've ever seen in terms of people with real or perceived conflicts refraining from voting. And that's, to your credit. I mean, it makes things a little awkward, but it's to your credit. Appeals go to the Remsco, and then ultimately Article 78. That's where Utica got in trouble the first time. They weren't happy with the outcome, and they blew their 2 years. They went to court, and the court said, no, there's the process to go through. They ultimately went back, started over again, went through the Remsco, got shut down there, went to court, and ended up getting it overturned. And like I said, the thing I wasn't going to talk to you about, the Utica case, is that this is all changing. We're on kind of unsteady ground here now, even with relation to this new legislation that's taken our authority away, the authority to make the determination of public need. Is it going to stop with Glens Falls and Utica? I don't know. It's a bad harbinger for the future of the Remscos if it's basically an act of fiat of the legislature. They can say, okay, we're going to, as far as municipalities go, the Remsco has no say. All right, and I guess, how about that? I ran out of slides. That's a good thing. I just want to leave you with this is where I was going to start, and I probably should have started here. 3 quotes. First was 1985 from the Appellate Division, 3rd Department. This was the tri-state. Jersey ambulance tried to come in. And this is the judge talking, the Appellate Division talking about the application process. The record reveals that in seeking certification as an ambulance service, the petitioner ambulance service encountered an administrative process that was confusing, time-consuming, cumbersome, and inefficient. Okay, 1985, I can agree with that. 1994, the Controller's Office issued an opinion that basically went through all of the general municipal law statutes, town law statutes, and concluded with an opinion that says, in view of the numerous statutory references, the above cited provisions collectively constitute a comprehensive, detailed statutory scheme governing the procedure for the provision of emergency and general ambulance service by emergency rescue and first aid squads. That's the controller's perspective on the stuff we have to deal with. And then, in response to that, yours truly authored a letter addressing that, where I said, in response to the controller's assessment, no right-minded person reviewing the cited authorities could ever come to that conclusion. The comprehensive, detailed statutory scheme is a product of poor drafting, cluttered thinking, and a complete failure by the legislature to enact meaningful and cogent laws that serve the public interest. The obsequious charade penned by the state controller is even more embarrassing than the crazy quote of laws, opinions, etc., that make the navigation of these matters so treacherous. So I didn't win any fans with that, and particularly not the controller's office. But this is insane what we have to do. It would be, and the state has tried to, through 06, tried to lay out a roadmap, but it's full of all it's got some real substance and then some ethereal things like public need, and but that's our charge. The most difficult thing in the whole process is the subjective, objective determination that this body has to make. So with that, I'm done, and we'll do it more substantively in the fall. We do everything.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When we're asked to vote, a lot of times the material that we're being asked to vote on, only the CON committee has seen. It's really tough to make a valid opinion and therefore a valid vote on that material. I realize it's done in an effort to save everybody from having to read large amounts of rather stimulating documents, but what's your opinion on that? Should we be reading this? Should everybody be reading it? Because you made a point that it shouldn't be a public affair where everything is rehashed out at the Remsco. So how do we get prepared to make an intelligent vote? Even all the material doesn't even come out at the public hearings all the time. So what is your recommendation? Should we be getting all this information?
Here, my thought is pretty simple. Tim and I have talked about this. We have a process where we get 2 original applications and certified mail and checks and all that. Our procedure, I'm going to recommend, is that not only do we get those, but we get a PDF. Okay, and we get a PDF with the application, and then with the fitness and competency stuff, the personal stuff, is a separate, and that we circulate the application. And that way you've got it I mean, you got a plausible reason to, you got it if you want to read it. There's no reason why that can't be done, okay? The court in Utica hammered the Remsco. They just hammered him for not doing what you're talking about, being absolutely conversant in all aspects of, the application, and saying basically, well, since Kunkel does a nice job, Utica hasn't shown us that there's a need, which is kind of a convenient. I can see how they got to that point, but I think it's also unrealistic to expect maybe 30 people to come in and be up to speed as the con committee is on these things. I mean, the reality of it is, you have a committee to make a recommendation. What the courts are now saying is that the people that are making the big vote, the final vote, need to be more attuned to what the factors are. And if they're not prepared coming in, there's got to be discussion on the record that at least passes the judge's muster that, well, even if they didn't know anything about the app coming in, it was discussed, the reasons were articulated, more than just the committee recommends because. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson I learned from reading this case, that we got to do more, we got to crank out more pages for Terry to type up when the vote's out there. And we're going to be, a lot of it's going to be just soy filler. We're going to have to go over and say, this is what we, not only this is our recommendation, but this is a specific finding. This is why, why this fits one of the 6 criteria. This is why reallocation won't work. But again, if you've been through some of those, you get the people out in the audience, you get the people with the pitchforks and the torches and everything, ringing in. It really can't be that. It's got to be tighter. And if it is, even if you make the wrong decision, at least you followed the right process, and your decision will probably not be overturned. And when I say wrong, I mean one that makes somebody unhappy and it gets challenged, which is virtually every one you make. But if you've done it the right way and articulated on the record, even if you're for the wrong reasons, but if you articulated the standards that they want articulated in the record, your decision will be validated, as long as there's a rational basis for it.
So we should be getting that out to all of us so that we can read it up front. What about the CON meeting before?
Well, no, Jeff, because what we've always done is we've always had the material available here for anybody from the Remsco to come in and review.
And realistically speaking, how many people who live in Greene County are going to drive up to review that, so on and so forth? And
honestly, Greene County is probably the wrongest choice, because I think Mr. Bettini is
Saratoga
always really
County.
well versed in this stuff.
Whatever.
But you're absolutely right. It's a difficult component of it. I think Terry's idea of putting it all in PDF, sending it home to you. The reality is, I think there still will be few people that will spend time with every single page of that, because most of these applications are copied formatted pieces from prior applications.
But at least then we have the option.
Exactly.
Does that make sense? Right now, I really feel kind of odd, and I'm not criticizing anybody, please understand that. But right now I feel a little odd. Every once in a while you're asked to vote and you just, wow, what way am I supposed to go on this? And it's tough to make a decision what's the right thing to do if you haven't read all the material. And that's basically why everybody in this organization is here, to attempt to do the right thing. And so as a result of that, if we can find a way to disseminate that information, just give us more than 2 days to read it, and give the CON committee more than 10 minutes before the meeting to reach a decision. And then that decision should be promulgated to us long before our meeting as well. So if there's some way we can do that, because it sounds like we're going to start getting hammered if we mess up on it.
Well, it sounds to me like Jeff's actually making a motion that makes a good deal of sense. So can we amend our procedures right now to reflect what Jeff is saying? Because if I can clarify
Well,
what I think you're saying is,
You want to know what I'm saying? I'm saying we should take a recommendation from Terry as to what we should be doing. And right from the legal counsel, hear what he specifically recommends us to do. And then we should take a look at that and vote on it, because he is the legal brain behind all of this.
Oh, boy,
Yes, you did.
it's
Wow,
scary.
didn't I
That's
step
scary.
that one right to the side, okay? So the reality is, I would really like to hear what you think we should do it, and put it so I can, if you want to verbalize it, that's fine, or put it in writing, but I don't want to put you on the spot for it now.
No, that's fine. The problem we have, realistically, that 60 days looks like a big time frame. It isn't, okay? Especially when you take, what do you do if you get one in tomorrow? I mean, there's no July and August meeting, so that 60 days is nothing, With all the, and then you're running around getting the F&C and making sure. So it's not a perfect process, but what I think, your sentiments are exactly what I gather when I sit there and look around the room and there's people voting on things they really don't know. But you know what? We'll accept the recommendation of the committee because that's what we have to do. And we need to articulate more, or not we, the collective we need to get our reasons out there on the record more to cover our butts. Okay? It's always in my position that if someone's going to challenge one of our determinations, we shouldn't be the respondent in the lawsuit. It ought to be the Remsco. Get it off our table, get it up to them. We'll make the right decision. If somebody wants to appeal it up, fine, let them do it. And we've been fortunate so far. We haven't been the target for.
Could you make us a recommendation?
Sure.
So we do this right?
Sure.
That's really what I want.
I can make a recommendation that you do it better based upon what the courts are telling me, but I don't know that
Fair
it's
enough.
right. Again, this Utica decision, I know the judges involved. I would have lost the house, the farm, everything on this decision.
You
Based-
wonder where the decision came from, because that's a very odd
It's a
decision.
3-2 decision.
It's a 3-2 split, and I never would have guessed. I know some of these judges very well, and I never would have guessed. It took a long time coming to. They sat on this for a while. The other thing I know is, I've learned from people I know on the inside, not about this decision, but the more they write, the less they know about this, the topic they're writing on. So, and this is a pretty detailed decision. It's pretty good, but they're actually, they just went out. They overturned an agency determination, which is it's like a tooth on a hen. Very rare would a court ever do that, and it's there. So, and again, take that, couple it with the new legislation. I don't know what we may get pulled from the need process entirely. If this, why just municipalities? Why not let the people in? I was going to say in Troy, but over on Central Avenue make the decision now.
Any other questions for Terry? I have one for you. It goes back to your slide on the process and fitness and competency review.
Yep.
You say that fitness and competency may be augmented by a Remsco using documented process.
Yep.
Does that mean that there needs to be, it can't be on a case-by-case basis, but if this Remsco were to say, we want to check X, and that policy is known in advance to the applicant, we're able to do that?
You can.
Because generally fitness and competence gets handed down to us by the state. They send us a letter that says the fitness and competence is complete.
And in my opinion, that's the way we ought to leave it.
Good.
Okay, only
Understood.
because,
A lot of liability.
yeah, they got the resources, and sometimes they've come back and said, we got a question about something. Unless we're gonna do background checks on everybody, and then we always, when the state does come back, because, when the state does come back with, we got a yellow light on this person, like, we all sit and panic in the county, go, okay, now what do we do? How do we get around this without saying? So it's really, I think, best left to the state. Not that I'm shirking responsibility, but we can boot it to them, let them take care of it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Jim?
So what's the procedure? Are we gonna attempt to have Terry create some changes associated with the CON policy, and then we're gonna embrace the review of that later in the year?
I think what I can do, or what you guys can do, and I don't know if it takes approval or not, if Tim gets an app, or somebody calls up, I got an app, okay, well, we need 2 originals, and we need you to send it, break the F&C stuff out, put it in the PDF, because that's our requirement now. No extra charge. but-
I actually updated the policy to include that language in there. And the last couple we've received electronic versions that I have sent out to members.
Folks, on the state council level, we receive those
Right.
applications back on a disc.
Right.
We review it on the Citizens Committee and also the state council. We have the actual disc or the original application in front of us.
That's what some other Remscos are doing, is sending them out to their members on the desk.
But the thing I'm very critical of, I think somebody's got to go through it. You don't want all that information going out. You got people's social security numbers going out there. That's why I think you got to partition the F&C stuff.
I agree.
Well, we're not in new business, so it's not the time for a motion, but I think it's clear that from the comments, that the desire is to have people receive the applications in some sort of electronic format in advance so that they can review them to to be more informed. And I think, Terry, this was a really good grounding for us in realizing that the next batch of CONs that comes before us, that the CON committee's job is going to not end with coming forward just with the recommendation, but they're going to share some more detail with us in order to make it a little bit more bulletproof should it go in a different direction. And I think Terry will be back in the fall to take us into session number 2, right?
Muni COAs
So-
and what they mean to you.
So, which a
Get
lot will
ready,
happen,
'cause
a lot will
they're-
happen there, so.
They're gonna be coming by the boatload, I think.
Well, I don't know about that. Well, thank you to Terry, and appreciate everyone taking time for this session. Let's step back into the regular agenda for tonight's meeting. Course applications for your information only. You'll see there are a number of course applications on the first page of the agenda, beginning in this fall. And then CON committee. Jim, anything to report?
Nothing pending at this time.
Nothing pending, that's good. Okay. Executive committee report. There's nothing from the executive committee since we did not have a quorum and did not meet. Anything that's going to be discussed will come from this body tonight. So executive director's report, Tim.
Relatively abbreviated report, finishing up a couple different EMS training classes. All the EMS award nominations from this region have been submitted to the state by the deadline. Unfortunately, I was advised by Steve today, none of our regional nominees made it to the state. Nevertheless, our regional nominees will be honored at our annual banquet in the fall. For those of you that are not aware of the upcoming narrow banding mandate for your radios and your FCC licenses, something you should all look into. We took it upon ourselves to have an informational seminar last week here for anybody in the region or outside the region for that matter that wanted to sit down, have some information. Jim Loader from New Scotland Communications prepared a presentation and came, and one person showed up. So I guess everybody else is up to speed with their narrow banding mandate requirements. Jay Tyler, our training coordinator, submitted a letter of resignation this month. He was just recently hired as the director for Guilderland EMS. I posted a job posting in the Times Union, ran a couple times last week, accepting applications or resumes for that position now, and sometime in the near future, hopefully, we'll come to the decision on who gets to sit in that office next. The only other thing we're doing now is we're updating our protocol manual. I expect to make another order shortly, and we're going to update the manual to reflect the Susquehanna region that recently adopted our protocols. So to cover that book, we'll have several additional counties on there to reflect their participation. That's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Do we know the percentage that we're covering from the state? Michael, you were tracking that
pretty
pretty
close.
close.
It's geographically, it's big. Population-wise, I'm not sure, but it's a huge area.
Some more regions are looking at this protocol as well.
Yeah.
So are we near 50%?
We may be approaching 50% of the land mass in terms of people thinking about it, but we're considering, what was the percentage of the deer we decided?
Lots of percentages are different.
Okay. Moose
Yeah.
population.
Lots of deer, most of the moose, probably all of the bobcats, and not a lot of people.
So you're giving them free deer whiskers if they sign up?
Exactly. 3 deer whistlers. I like it.
All right, thank you, Tim. The treasurer is not here tonight, and so I will give the treasurer's report. The printed treasurer's report is before you. We are continue to be in a good place, both in terms of our assets and in terms of our cash flows. New to the balance sheet is something that members have asked for, which is for unrealized gains and losses on investments to be presented in the balance sheet, so you can see what happens as the market changes on a month-to-month basis with our investments. There are 3 bills for payment tonight. Actually, there are 2 bills for payment tonight, I stand corrected. One is for a plaque to be presented for $63.90. One is for a monthly phone service through Earthlink, $621.66. And so I can take any questions on the treasurer's reports, and also am looking for a motion to approve paying those bills. Motion, thank you.
Just a
Oh,
question.
question, sorry.
Why do we show phone on both the, I guess, normal monthly expenses and then the special one in the, for approval?
Tim, can you
I
answer that?
don't know.
Or is that something because we moved into this building, an additional charge or something because of the move?
Is that full equipment?
What is Earthlink? Is that our?
Earthlink is, it's everything. It's the phones, it's,
Are they paying your cell phone bill? That $85 is about right for a cell phone.
no, I haven't submitted any cell phone bills in a couple months. I never remember to do it. So,
So what is Earthlink? I missed that.
Earthlink is a provider service.
Okay.
yeah, all our, I believe it's all our VoIP, it's all our monthly phone and everything, but I can get a definitive answer for you tomorrow, Jeff.
I agree with it, it's kind of odd, so is it?
This is a
included our
typical monthly
physician,
bill.
Tape line, is that what that's part of, or
No, but this is our typically monthly bill for them.
But am I correct that the question from Jim is why does a typical, usually we bring forward atypical expenses for approval, not the typical monthly bills? Why is that coming forward? Is that correct, Jim?
Yeah, and maybe it's just a carryover from when we moved to this building, there was an expense and the line item just picked up over there.
I'll find out tomorrow. I don't know,
Well,
but I'll,
if you could, depending on the will of the group, I think that we probably need to give Tim the authority to pay the bills, but we can ask you to just come back and at the next meeting, explain specifically why this one appeared in this way.
absolutely.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not questioning
Yeah.
the expense, it's just a
Okay.
position on the report.
All right, so do we have a motion to pay the bills?
Be happy to make a motion.
I'll second.
Great. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, so the bills are paid, and we'll get a detail on this specific bill at the next meeting. Okay, that takes us to the GPO report. The GPO numbers for the month of April and May have come in, and our volume has decreased significantly over the last several months. We're going to have, Tim is bringing in for a meeting our sales rep from Mohawk Hospital Supply to talk about what's been happening on marketing efforts. We had been meeting with them monthly for some time, and that stopped. We missed a couple months. But we are going to have to take a look at the future of this program and whether it's something that is worth continuing if it doesn't make some minimum sales targets. And I think we've probably dropped below that minimum at this time for any effort to be put into it. But, so more to come, I think, on that in the future. Dr. Daly, Medical Director and Medical Advisory Committee and Academic Committee reports.
I will be brief. The meetings were fascinating in terms of discussion of things like HIPAA. In particular, for folks traveling across, long distance across places like Rensselaer County, Dr. Ushkow brought up a discussion regarding the pre-notification of Samaritan in particular, but other hospitals by radio. There are significant portions of Rensselaer County where there is no cell coverage. If there's a patient that's going to be transported across that area of Rensselaer County after the diagnosis of a STEMI, it is not a HIPAA violation to use the patient's name over the radio to assure safe transit and appropriate medical care at the receiving facility. So he asks, and it is very reasonable, which is why I bring it here as well, for that to be done through a dispatcher if necessary, if we are unable to make cell contact with the receiving facility regarding a STEMI, a return of spontaneous circulation case, where past medical history may be profoundly important and an old EKG may make all the difference in the world. We anticipated this would be something that would be relatively rare, therefore we're not going to put out an advisory to the effect. Everything has been working out reasonably well over time. They're going to make sure that the dispatchers know that they can pass this information along, but just so your providers know if they're out in the county. But this is something that if they are asked by the hospital across the airwaves to please do it, let's comply. Other pieces of update, any questions to that? Guys, I think it particularly pertains to Mohawk paramedics out in the county. Other things that are of note, BLS Narcan, our naloxone program, has taken off like wildfire. This is something that is being done now in Suffolk County. I went down for the rollout. It's going to be done in Rochester. They're going to kick it off next month, I believe, with Rochester Fire. It's being done, and some folks in Arams are going to be picking it up. I'm going to Waynesburg tomorrow night. Rensselaer County and the Sheriff's Department out there is already on board. So it's a pretty wide range of folks who are getting involved with it, so it's pretty exciting. I think if there was anything else of particular import here, there was not. If I can just roll straight into the medical director's report, is that all right, Steve? I'd just like to thank Tim for sending staff to help out, but we were asked by Senator Skelos and the Senate leadership to go down to the Capitol and teach CPR to the members of both the Senate minority and the Senate majority towards the end of the session. It was an extremely successful training session. The minority did not, there were not many members of the minority that arrived. However, the Senate minority leader did get an opportunity to get trained before one of their meetings. The Senate majority all came together, I think, to an individual, and we did some really good hands-only training with them. Many were also interested in additional information, so that was very exciting. They then passed the CPR in the schools bill in the Senate, literally right after we left them. So they still had it bouncing through their heads, I guess, when they went downstairs to vote. Didn't make a damn bit of difference because the Assembly, who rejected every offer we had to them to learn CPR, chose to not take us up on the opportunity. The Assembly has not been trained in CPR. We will note that, as was brought to my attention by one of the senators, the only place in the Capitol that someone has died is actually on the Assembly floor.
You say it like it's a bad thing.
I make no commentary other than the fact that he actually did speak to Assembly staffers. They said they were going to call me back. The staffers sounded excited, and that was the last thing I heard. So who knows? Maybe we'll have another opportunity to go down there and teach them how to do it harder, faster, and deeper. We'll see.
I heard they were pretty good.
So
Thank
that's
you.
all, sir.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, any questions for Dr. Bailey? All right.
Sorry, Tim. Steve. What I've been working on over here, by the way, is the Bureau of EMS alternate formulary to be used in cases of medication substitution requirements. This will be issued by the Bureau at some point. And what it's designed to do is allow us to do what we've been already doing anyway, which is being proactively involved with medication shortages to make sure we can continue to staff our ambulances and keep our ambulances running up to snuff. But the Bureau is actively involved in this process. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that this is not something that anybody is acting on their own with. Really important, if you hear of a drug shortage that's beginning to affect your agency, call, let Tim know. If it's affecting one agency, it will affect more. We need to know about it here so we can track it and come up with good answers for what we can do from there. Okay.
Did you see the New York City policy they sent out this month?
Haven't seen anything.
I'll forward it to you.
Thanks, Mike. On State EMS Council report, I will give it for Rich, who's not here tonight. The council met in May, a number of highlights. First, one that will affect us. The Department of Health has notified the Remsco that each Remsco will now need to submit at least 2 nominations for a Remsco seat when their current member's term expires. So Rich wants us to keep this in mind. Rich's term expires at the end of 2012. What this means is now that no longer will we pick our delegate and send it to the Remsco. We will pick at least 2 delegates from which the Commissioner of Health can pick one of them. So, that is part of the diversity review that has been done by the governor's office to try and increase diversity. So we'll have to vet 2 qualified candidates and send them forward without prejudice, and then the governor, or at least 2, we can send more, and the governor will pick from them. So for our nominating committee process, that will be, for picking our Remsco delegate for next year, will be a significant change in how we do it going forward. Mike referred to the medication shortages. The director of the Bureau did recently meet with her colleagues from across the country, where they get together and compare some of the issues they're dealing with. From her report, the system we have in New York for dealing with medication shortages is the envy of the other states, because we seem to have a semi-functional way of very quickly, Mike's giving me the look, of getting ahead of them. But
Giving the camera the look.
another major item discussed is the changes in the advanced life support education and training. I think, as most of you know, New York State has decided to adopt the national standards. So that means that EMTI will be moving in the end of 2013 to the national AEMT, and that scope of practice will change. The same thing on the paramedic level. The state has decided to keep the CCT level, even though that does not exist at the national level. But so we will see changes in EMTI and changes in EMTP towards the end of 2013. Also of significance, the council approved the new mutual aid policy. It passed unanimously, and I think since the meeting, every agency has received the mutual aid policy that gives people guidance on how to work with mutual aid agencies. Mike mentioned that the CPR and Bill School did not pass, and Terry pointed out that one bill that did pass is a bill that most of the EMS community don't particularly care for. That's the Utica CON bill. The last 2 things under new business, the Remsco approved a program for paramedic flu vaccines, where paramedics in our region will be part of a pilot program working with Dr. Funk in doing community flu clinics, and that is something very new. And there was a significant discussion of community paramedicine and paramedics working in non-traditional roles, and the state's formed a technical advisory committee of the Remsco to start looking at the scope of practice of paramedics and working outside of the emergency setting. And actually, Mike sent me a whole slew of articles just yesterday about what other states are doing in this area. But clearly, this is a hot topic, and something that I think we'll see addressed quite a bit in our state over the next couple of years. Any questions on the Remsco report? Okay, Nurses Committee. Anne-Marie? Okay, no report. MCI Committee, BJ. You've got.
Yes, we're in the process of reviewing and updating the regional mutual aid plan that we have in existence now. I'm happy to report that we have all 6 counties on board with all strike teams. So we will be adding that into the plan. We will also be disseminating that back to the agencies, as well as all the PSAPs that are involved, 1 per county. And we will be following up with those PSAPs to make sure that they are educated in how to proceed with this plan once it's requested. Jim Reagan is working with Colony EMS in Albany to do a drill in September there at the airport.
September 22nd, it'll be tested.
And we will be testing this plan as far as response and seeing how well the PSAPs work together.
Thank you. Any questions from the MCI Committee? Phyllis, anything from the membership committee tonight?
We have 2 members at large that the membership expired March and April, Tim and Jeff. I just guess you gotta get letters to us to re-up your members. Yep. I have it down that it expired April 2001.
I'll go back and check the minutes, but I think it's
got 2 years left.
I have it down as 2008. And then we have
I'll
some that expire in October of this year.
Submit a letter.
Okay.
I'll check with Tim to make sure.
Okay, we can check on both of those. And the other one is Jim Stairs?
Yeah.
Okay. UI Committee, Jim?
Did not meet.
Okay. Wards Committee, Lynn and Skip both not here, but Tim has printed up the 2011 Regional Award winners, so congratulations to everybody for their good work. We had a very good group of submissions this year, some of them coming in literally at the 11th hour, and I don't think anyone was refused. So thank you to everyone for promoting the awards in their regions. And I think Tim is working with St. Peter's Hospital, who has offered to again host us for the regional award presentation ceremony. Okay. County reports, Albany.
Nothing to report.
Columbia.
With respect to the Tri-Village Fire Company CFR original and refresher courses, we have 14 people registered. 10 of them are originals and 4 are refreshers. So that course is now in session.
Great, thank you. Greene County.
Our EMT class and excuse me, had good turnout, good passing rate. I think only 2 failed out of it. Our CFR just completed, I believe, and we'll just print the results of that.
Great, thank you. Rensselaer County.
There is no replacement yet for Evan. They're working on that process. Other than that, Rensselaer County does not.
All right, thank you. Saratoga County. No report tonight? Okay. Schenectady County.
The only thing that Schenectady County Ellis Hospital is going to start, I don't know how much people know, but the ambulance entrance is going to be closing soon. And we're going to be going in the front of the building, so it's going to be big changes for UEI.
Oh, okay. I assume that, Tim, is there something that's going to be coming out to all agencies about that change?
That's the first I heard of it, but once they get notification to us, I'll send it out.
I mean, I know that some of the Albany County agencies, once in a blue moon, will go to Ellis because a patient wants us to go there, and we should know where to park.
Ellis is usually pretty good at getting the information
Right.
out and they're ready to share it with us.
Great, okay. Awesome. All right, under new business, we have some course sponsorship renewals from Western Turnpike, Hudson Valley, and Rensselaer County Ambulance and Rescue Association. And I think we need some motion to approve those. Motion made, second?
Second.
Seconded, any discussion? All in favor? All right. Okay, I think we have 2 items under new business that I know of, but does anyone else got any? We have no old business. Does anyone have any new business they want to bring up? Dr. Daly?
Sir, I'd like to make a motion if I'm,
Sure.
if I'm appropriate, not knowing Robert's Rules of Order, of course, not wanting to get in trouble.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, if I may I make a motion for $2,500 to be allocated to the executive director for the purchase of an automatic external defibrillator and appropriate first response equipment for people in this building and its immediate confines.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, sir.
Is there a second for that motion? All right, so that's, Tim informed us in the executive committee that we have lots of non-working functional EMS equipment in this building, but nothing that is necessarily prepared should there be a true emergency. So if all are in favor, then Tim over the summer can equip us with the first response station that will be able to be used should there be an emergency in the building.
Good idea.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We were joking that Tim is going to have to mark this. This is the real stuff, not for trading. Okay. I think the other item, Tim, if I'm correct, we need a motion to suspend with having the meetings in the months of July and August if we're so inclined to do such.
Correct, and you okay to pay the bills?
I think as with tradition, Phyllis has made the motion to not meet during July and August, subject to the call of the chair, should there be a need for a meeting. Is there a second?
And payment of monthly bills for those two.
And, okay, is that a separate motion? Oh, well. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. And then Tim mentioned payment to the bills. Can the payment of the bills during the month of July and August done by a email vote of the executive committee? I think we did that last summer and then was confirmed by the board at the end of the summer. So, all right, so the last item tonight is just a presentation. And as mentioned earlier, Phyllis is retired, June is retiring at September. So even though this is not necessarily your last meeting, Tim's got your plaque here already. So I hope that you can come forward and accept this for your many years of service to the body. And I didn't know this, but my father-in-law is periodontist, and he's been active in the medical society. So he's been coming to Albany for years and years to go to meetings at the dental society. And apparently he's been telling Judith for years that, yeah, my son-in-law, he's an EMT. Now, Judith and I have been sitting in the same room doing this for 4 or 5 years, never knowing that we had this family connection. But anyway, so thank you for all of your service, and we wish you the best in all your other things that you do.
Thank all of you, and you have no idea how much I'm going to miss all of you. And after 20-some-odd years in EMS, this is very difficult for me, but I think it's time. I think it's important to have some fresh blood, and I think it's time to move on. I'm actually just accepted a position on the board of Upper Hudson Planned Parenthood, so I'm looking forward to that, and I thought it was time to stop juggling too many things. Thank you very much.
All right.
You will always be welcome to come back and visit if you need a fill of coming to the meeting, sir. All right. Unless anyone else has anything, we need a motion to adjourn? So moved. So moved. Second, all in favor? No, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Mr. Reed.
No problem. I don't know if you get the spell check from her or not. I found a couple changes. I'll, none of them will get me. I guess they It doesn't matter, the guy's still. Have a good day. I'll let you know if anything happens. This is a custom program, right?
Yeah.